Hey, everybody. My name is Andy Boyan. Welcome to Chainlink Live. I'm from Chainlink Labs, and we are doing a Q&A today with dxFeed, one of the Chainlink premium data providers to provide data for all our smart contracts through the Chainlink infrastructure. Really happy to have you guys here today. We're going to do some Q&A about data and really learn what is it that makes financial data, dxFeed's financial data, really premium. Like what needs to go into it? Why is that data important, and how that opportunity kind of translates through to smart contracts in the Chainlink network. So stick around and learn a little bit about data and how they do it. We'll have time for Q&A as well because it's called the Q&A. Feel free to drop your questions in the chat to my buddy Mark down there. We'll address them as they come up, or maybe save them to the end. Who knows? It depends on how much we start talking. So first, let's learn a little bit about dxFeed and you, each of our guests together. What is dxFeed? What makes you special? How did you get involved, and what's your background? Oleg, let's start with you. You're the CEO here. Let's hear the origin story.
Yeah, the origin story is actually quite practical. So we've been in the traditional market of building systems for online brokerages and exchanges for 20 years already. And somewhere around 2007, we have had so many problems with the current vendors of our key clients that we just decided that we will do it ourselves. So we basically started with the promise of quality for our customers, right? So because this was a way for us to not to deal with somebody else's faults, right? So it's easier to control when you have it all. So fast forward to current moment, right? So we do cover all the traditional exchanges in the United States, many of those in Europe, some of those in Asia, and we are present around the world in the network of data centers and providing quality data to traditional firms in the capital markets industry. And it's about time that we start thinking about entering DeFi economy, right? With the promise of quality data that we already have, and our established technology, and some innovations that we have come up with over the course of last several years. So that's what we're bringing in.
Fantastic. And Dmitry, I know that you are on the technical side as well. I've seen some of your webinars about how you guys create these data feeds. Can you give us a brief, like, technical explanation or at least description about how these data feeds are premium? Like, what does that mean?
Well, I think Oleg already mentioned that we are directly connected to the core data sources, so we don't use any aggregators or like middlemen. So we are like a partner of traditional exchanges, and we do provide data for largest online brokerages. From the other hand, so we don't stick ourselves only to traditional distribution of raw data, which we are getting from exchanges. And so we did some innovation and experiments in traditional data sources. For example, we do have some signature equities feeds or some OTC feeds for, I don't know, Forex exchange instruments, and in crypto field as well. And right now, so we do see that all which we've done is very applicable to the crypto and DeFi infrastructure, and we simply can't ignore this web field while, I don't know, many traditional big names are still keeping themselves a part of the crypto market. But we see that our services are on a greatest need right now, because the number of data sources in crypto is booming. Lots of CEXs and DEXs appear these days. So our signature infrastructure plus our expertise and distributing the market data will be quite a good fit here.
No, yeah, I can't help but agree. Not only are the data sources growing, there's so many exchanges, decentralized and centralized, as you mentioned, but then there's more developers trying to do what I call it weird stuff. They want to experiment. And so they want to do different things with data. And so being able to come at data in a different way or get different indicators is pretty important to be able to do. Brandon, you're from Luca. Can you tell us what Luca is about and how you fit into this program here with dxFeed and premium data?
Yeah, sure. So, Luca started off as really the first Bitcoin tax calculator back in 2014. And as we saw the asset prices rising in 2017, there was this push to develop institutional grade products because of all the hedge funds and corporations that were looking at trading digital assets, right? So we started building these institutional grade products, everything from data management of your digital assets to portfolio tracking, and then outside of that, we came out with two traditional data sets: reference data and Luca Prime, an institutional grade pricing service. These data products, are necessary in the traditional space for everything they do. In order to trade, you need to have, reference data. In order to value, you need to have a price that you can stand by. Our pricing products are aligned to regulations that are coming out, from the regulators in the US and around the world. And, partnering with DevX, we've been able to really integrate with the traditional set and have a great partner to redistribute our data with.
Cool. I just want to give a little hi to the people who have joined. My name is Andy Boyan. This is Chainlink Live. We are talking to dxFeed, Brandon from Luca as well. In this data ecosystem, the question is, how do we get premium data to smart contracts? That's the Chainlink question, Chainlink Labs question. And here are data providers. And so the kind of question goes out there as we talk about creating a data business. So it's not any Joe can just go and pull data from an exchange, add it to a spreadsheet, and then use it in a real financial product. You can, but it's risky to do that because of all sorts of things. So I want to get an understanding and let our viewers get an understanding. What does it take to maintain like a strong enterprise grade level service-oriented data business? Like, what are some of those operational realities? John, I'm going to have you go ahead and jump in on this one, and you guys can bounce around. Feel free to chat as well on this. Go ahead, John.
Sure. I think I'll just draw a quick parallel between what Chainlink does as a platform, as well as how sort of blockchain conceptually works, and where that crosses over with what you're speaking to as far as the operations it takes to run a traditional data business. And a lot of that is validation and resilience, right? You have to have consistency of availability of the data sets, so you can't have periods where the data is down for any reason. If it's market hours, you're trading, and your screen goes blank, that's a major problem. Obviously, same thing in anything to do with digital assets is just as much as traditional financial markets. Validation, to the point that Brandon was making, a lot of the processes that are required from a regulatory standpoint are about proving and validating that a certain number that you're trying to use as a reference point for possibly massive value that you're tying to this is in fact true, accurate, fair, and at that point in time appropriate to use for that, right? Validating based on looking at prevailing markets and assembling some sort of composite quote, validating based on some sort of evaluated pricing where you don't really have a liquid market that you can assess from that. What is the fair market value of something? Various combinations of things like that. And I would say I'll certainly let my colleagues from dxFeed comment further, but even my past career history before I was in this space was with NASDAQ and the Toronto Stock Exchange. And I can tell you there's layers and layers and layers of cost and human resources in technology and everything to have multiple lines of connectivity to every source that you're required to, so that you have failover, so that you have monitoring, so that you have granularity as far as understanding who has what ability to manipulate and activate certain kinds of activities within your infrastructure, so that to your clients, the major financial corporations of the world, et cetera, everything is just working and fine all of the time, right? And ultimately, I think you can say this about the way Chainlink aggregates data feeds as well. Similarly, you want to have high availability. You want to have, confirmation that everybody else agrees that there is a consistency of whatever that data set is that's being published, and that is true and fair and accurate in that respect. And obviously blockchain conceptually, just in general, it's sort of everywhere and nowhere at the same time. You have nodes all over the place. It's impossible to take down as far as knocking out one particular server, things of that nature. There's a very elegant system there, some of which has some of these traits that cross over from what is required for traditional markets as well, but to legal standards and sort of defined specs, if you will, in a differently looked upon way, but ultimately the same result. I don't know, Dmitry or Oleg, if you'd like to add to those points.
Well, yeah. So there were a lot of things happening behind the scenes in actually provision of quality data, right? And it's not about only the raw data that you deliver, right? It's about the ability to actually build up on this foundation to deliver some sort of derivative products that might be interesting for the market, right? That this could be all sorts of indices, indicators, calculated data, aggregated data, right? So that. That's something that we build on top of the foundation products that we have, and that's something that we're ready to provide as well to blockchain community.
So I think of that like in the 90s and 2000s when credit default swaps first entered the market and people first started to use them. You need to have data that gets at that underlying, like what is that? How do you access that data so that we can put it into a model so we can test it and then actually implement it? You need to be able to make changes and get different data types or different cuts and versions of data, different side slices. So it's not just a stream. It's more than that. It's being able to build different data types, different kinds of feeds for different customer demands, right? Does that sound right?
Oh, I can comment here as I work tightly with our business analysis team, for example, and we always track what is, for example, new in a crypto world, like new derivatives which appear these days. But from the other hand, so we do see that people somehow introduce something as a completely new, but for sure we already met this in traditional world. So it can be any kind of derivative which was already introduced in a traditional market, some insurance product. So even now, so I don't know, you can treat like balancer pools or like curves, something completely new, but you can easily find something in the history already, which traditional market data are already familiar with and know how to deal with these concepts. So that's why, yeah, of course, so you can see new products in crypto and they will be named differently. But if you know the story and you are in this business like 20 years, so most likely you already met something in traditional world which is pretty similar.
Yeah, and it's not always easy, right? What I think about how much is locked in DeFi. That's a really common crypto question. What's the TVL in DeFi? Well, what's DeFi? Does that count as staking? Does it count as proof of stake staking? Some people, it counts. It's earned. Like I'm earning a return on that. It's locked, but it's not quite the same as a financial product. Is it stuff on Ethereum only? Is it stuff across these things? They're complicated questions. So you make decisions about data and what those means. That kind of gets to my next question. How do you ensure data is high quality? We say we want to serve high quality data to people. It is the value it is for a reason because it's been back tested and made a choice. How do you make those choices? Brandon, can you speak a little bit to that? Like when you guys are creating a feed or a price point, what are some of the elements that go into that decision making?
Yeah, sure. And it starts really on the data collection side, right? There's, as we've all stated, there's many exchanges, new ones coming out, decentralized, centralized every day, right? How do we bring in that data and ensure that we're comparing apples to apples when we're doing any type of, analytics or aggregate pricing, right? Basic example is just Bitcoin, right? There are some exchanges that call it XBT, some call it BTC. How do you bring that in and just normalize that so that you call it a single instrument and you can compare that across the many different exchanges and data points that you're receiving, right? So for example, on our side, we have over 20 billion data points coming into our system today. We're scaling, we scale and normalize all of that in near real time with, the dxFeed partners that we have. right? And when we bring in that data, not only do we normalize it, we then have to ensure that the outliers aren't there. Did a bad data point come through, right? Could be anything from an additional digit to maybe a decimal place that was moved, a little bit, right? So the precision becomes something that we have to look at. And, to John's point, having that operational process, right, that we have, having both automated and, human process looking at it, that's what really brings that institutional grade data quality to the industry. And, that's been done in the traditional markets for many, many years. And, we're seeing that in the digital asset and cryptocurrency markets as well.
Yeah, I mean, the same things that apply to how do you find a BTC price also apply to Forex prices and asset prices and all these. There's even more exchanges, right? And so, Dmitry, can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah.
I saw your video about building market data from some Forex prices. I think you did a conference, and I'm going to link that down below because it's great, a great deep dive for some of our developers to see really like how you guys go about creating these. But feel free to speak to that.
Yeah, so when we're talking about Forex, as it's also a decentralized market, so of course we are facing the same challenges as you already mentioned, like that. So the spreads can be unpredictable, so that can be any types of outliers. And so in general, yeah, we introduced some kind of engine which allows us to, effectively process all this in real time and provide with a reference feed which can be reliably used in a different kind of applications. When we are talking about some traditional market, even the US stocks market, so that's basically the question when I receive every day. So can you provide us with a reliable, Apple price? But for example, not many people knows that every US stock is trading on like 17 exchanges in the United States. And so when you want to create a product, so you have to take into account not only the pricing information, but the licensing challenges, the use cases, and know the market quite well. And so when you own this expertise, so you can build quite an interesting tailored products for different use cases. And for Luca, for Chainlink, for example, we introduced a very special setup of US stocks feed, which allows us to keep it license free, but from the other hand, provide a original product from US stock exchanges. I don't know if anybody does this today.
Yeah, I don't know. So that's fantastic, right? That's at Chainlink Labs. What we're trying to build is the rails between good data and smart contracts. So the more good data we can get to smart contracts, Forex data, asset data, stocks, whatever it is, that we love that because that gives people an opportunity to build and be creative and do different kinds of things. But you guys are also firmly planted in the traditional finance world. You're serving TD Ameritrade and other large offices. John, can you comment a little bit? What are some differences between crypto data and like this DeFi world and the traditional kind of world, whether that's a hedge fund or a family office or some of the larger funds?
Well, I think the answer to that is in some cases everything is different, and in some cases nothing is different. Everything's the same, right? Conceptually, you're dealing primarily with time series data, so every minute if price ticks over that concept, as far as it was this price for, let's say, BTC or Apple or whatever it is, certain price, certain volume traded at that price. That kind of information with a timestamp is common across all of those sorts of things. Elements of reference data. So we're looking at an instrument that in, let's say, traditional financial markets has a company that was the issuer of the instrument, the country of incorporation, the number of units that are created. Similar types of things you can also see on, let's say, any other crypto instrument aside from perhaps the issuer, because who issued Bitcoin? Well, there is no particular backing issuer, things of that nature. Other unique characteristics of, let's say, events that take place. So a corporate action, you might have a stock split, for example. There's very clearly defined rules around how you understand and define and handle that information. If you have a chain split in, let's say, the Bitcoin to Bitcoin Cash event, That's not at all the same thing, right? There's obviously similarities in concept. You know, have two parallel things where there was one thing before, but how you handle that, where you get that information, how do you recognize that this event is on its way? Those are pre-planned and much more organized, shall I say, in the traditional market sense, because the laws require that to be so. You know where you're going to go and you're going to acquire this information. You can predict it. There's a calendar of these sorts of things. In crypto, you know, to a certain extent, good luck, right? Maybe it's on Telegram, maybe it's on Twitter, maybe there's some Discord, maybe there's a number of disparate sources, and then in some cases, there's maybe a private Slack group that, you know, some core developers of some platform know, and it's privileged information. It's hard to find out. So those somewhat more disjointed and slightly less formal arrangements can make this a lot more difficult to keep up with. But, you know, therein also lies the opportunity for those who have this information flow to, you know, potentially profit, which we've seen time and time again. There's been massive, you know, volatility in this industry, which I would say in traditional market data is much less frequent to see, you know, a 10 to 20% swing in any particular asset price over the course of a couple of hours, as we've seen probably several times this month already, let alone, you know, the general sort of crypto history in that respect. That aside, as Dmitry was mentioning, because of this much more sort of steeped history of you know, rule sets, formality, and process, there's a lot of document trails and paperwork that there are then constrictions on, you know, what you can do with data, unless either commercially you're licensed to do so, you have otherwise explicit permission, or, you know, or legally you just may not be allowed to distribute certain kinds of information certain ways, regardless of commercial implication, right? Some information is just not for, let's say, public consumption. Maybe there's instruments which are for sophisticated institutional investors only. Disclosure of certain kinds of information of that sort to the general public is you know, not as easy to do, or is possibly restricted entirely from being done. But whether we're talking about traditional data or crypto data, you know, ultimately it does come down to whoever the consumer is. They need to know that they're getting the right thing. They need to know what it is, where it's coming from. It suits their needs, and it's always going to be there when they need it. And whatever the technological or commercial cost of acquiring that data, that also suits their use case, right? If they derive $10 of value from something, they're happy to pay more than $10 for it, right? The opposite is not going to be true. They won't pay, you know, $20 for something that's worth $5 to them, that sort of thing. So you know, commercially, how we can also make sure that we optimize all of these factors to, you know, to receive as a business, obviously, some sort of value for ourselves from this is a balance that, you know, Chainlink has its own interesting perspective on how that also offers that from an ecosystem perspective versus how we might do that more bilaterally, shall I say, in a traditional sales environment.
Great. So I have a kind of a question. We're nearing time, so I want to give a question to the panel and kind of piggybacking off of this idea of what do family offices or traditional finance and DeFi need. Are you guys seeing interest in traditional finance for crypto beyond just price? Like, what is that interest? How is it changing? Give us a sense of the market right now, and what is kind of that interest? I'm like so deep in the DeFi world, I have no idea what's going on elsewhere. I know stocks kind of go up. That's all I know. But Brandon, why don't you start, and then go ahead and take turns. Like, what are you hearing in the finance industry about crypto? And if it's negative, feel free. Like, let's just have a conversation here. We just want to hear what's the pulse.
Yeah, it's definitely not negative, right? The traditional world is really looking at this asset class both from a blockchain technology perspective as well as a investment perspective, right? We see companies that are really focused on market infrastructure, like Luca, right? Developing, you know, tools to help bring blockchain technology to the traditional world, right? Because there are a lot of efficiencies that can be there. And then we also see a lot of, you know, high net worth individuals, you know, private offices, hedge funds, right? Even the largest banks in the world looking at just being able to trade cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, Ethereum, et cetera. So really, in general, I think the industry is looking at crypto as a way to, as a new investment vehicle, but as a way to also bring efficiencies to, you know, certain markets.
Oleg, do you have thoughts about this? How is traditional finance looking at crypto right now?
Yeah, so we see many new developments around the crypto. So mostly it lies in the futures and other derivative space, right? So traditional exchanges try to approach this with caution, but the public interest is so high, so it's just new indices, new futures, and I would say we will see all sorts of crypto derivatives in the traditional space in the next 2 to 3 years, like blooming, right? So, and that's a essential way for it to evolve.
Yeah, Dmitry, what are you getting from customers?
Well, so I think that many traditional like hedge funds and family offices are experiencing some kind of FOMO, of course, because they're looking on this booming crypto market, and so when you mentioned that there is market size is now about 2 trillion and they're simply not there, so of course they are thinking about so that they can't just ignore this anymore. And I think that very important step, which was made last year, it's that some institutionals publicly entered this space. I'm talking both about the companies who purchased the Bitcoin on a relatively large amount of money. So it shows that some adoption already started. And so what I think can be done in a traditional finance world to become closer to crypto, maybe we will see more ETFs on a regular exchanges approved by regulators, which will allow to safely enter the crypto market by retail investors and institutionals. So I think that this world's just getting closer, and we will see this process in the next couple of years. On the other hand, there are still some inefficiencies in crypto market, and I think that everybody is talking about the huge gas phases right now on the Ethereum networks, and new blockchains are coming in, partially solving this problem. And I think also there will be more and more centralization, so more cross-swap products, more compatibility. So crypto market will also become more mature and more maybe comfortable and intuitive for traditional finance. So I'm quite positive. So I see the adoption. Maybe cryptocurrencies will not be only Bitcoin to a mass auditor like it can be treated now. So
I see this. I see dxFeed coming in. That's a bellwether. You guys are coming for a reason, because there's demand, there's interest, and providers like you coming in and saying, okay, we're going to be a part of this. That's just further expanding. Yes, this is not just exists, but it is premium. It is a real financial product. People can trade it. John, what are you seeing and hearing?
Yeah, so I think, so I'll echo my colleagues' points, but I think I'll sum it up in my perspective to a certain extent in both directions, both crypto coming to financial markets and the opposite as well, right? As far as data availability for traditional instruments into the crypto universe, it's packaging. That's what it comes down to. So, these hedge funds and other sophisticated institutions, for a lot of them, legally, how do they touch this? How do they get access to that price opportunity? If all they understand, if you assume that they only understand that this stuff goes up and they just want that as part of their portfolio, how do you give them the ability to buy or sell that product? And so, as was said, things like futures products and options products, as we've seen on traditional markets, where they have the legal ability to go and access those markets, great, for a stepping stone. The more common investor who's looking for a spot instrument like an ETF, we've seen that as early as 2014 in Sweden with XBT Provider. I don't think that gets as much coverage as it should. More recently, Switzerland, the rest of the European Union has been doing that sort of thing. Canada earlier last year approved an ETF. A series of them have come out since then. Hopefully the US follows through with all this precedent as well, to really allow like a bunch of capital flow into this collectively, one way or another. But giving somebody this checkbox that they can say, this is offered to me in a format that I can invest into, this fits my existing parameters of what I'm capable of purchasing. As long as the content is to what they want, that package has to be appropriate. So as long as that's possible, I think we'll see more capital inflows in one way or another. Now, on the opposing side, what good is an equity on a traditional exchange for somebody in crypto unless they can get access to some unit of value that they can attach themselves to there, right? So having the fact that we've been able to bring an initial group of equities, including the Coinbase ticker for that matter, back to the crypto universe. Now you can use all your DeFi tool sets to latch onto that data through Chainlink to reference to it for whatever it is. You could have some sort of synthetic products that relate to this. You can have futures products that relate to this, which are all DeFi based, all on chain, all kinds of tack on of yield this and compounding that have been coming out, and I'm sure there's more that I have no idea that have just hit the market in the last 24 hours for that matter. And so I think giving that ability to sort of link the two together through Chainlink is definitely the most attractive thing that we can be working on right now, and sort of in terms of the tools that we have and the skills that we have, being that gateway to sort of be this direction of traditional markets into this space, while we watch some other players play the other direction of packaging these crypto products into the traditional space.
Yeah, now is the time. That I am on board with that. I'm gonna wrap this session with that, because I think that was a great way to send it off. We have a couple of great questions. You guys were running low on time, so I do appreciate your questions. We're not going to get to them, but I want to encourage you to please check out dxFeed. They've got a great website. They've got their own YouTube page, which is full of informational, deep dive, technical content, and great content about data. I will link that video at the end of this one. It'll pop up as the suggested video, so you guys can go and check out Dmitry, like getting really into the equations and everything. I appreciate your time so much, Brandon, Oleg, Dmitry, and John. This has been a great conversation. I learned a lot about data. Is there any other place where we should find and follow you? Brandon, go ahead and tell us about Luca.
Yeah, you can hit us up on our Twitter, obviously our website, luca.tech, or reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. Happy to chat about crypto and anything data.
Fantastic. And Oleg, where should we find information about dxFeed?
Yeah, it's dxFeed.com and all the related resources on all sorts of messages and social networks. And write to us directly.
Fantastic. Please join communities, join Discords, join Telegrams, join the Chainlink Discord for a lot of technical talk, Chainlink Telegram for official announcements. I saw a few questions in there about other types of data feeds. Like and subscribe to this channel, and I do more of these Q&As with people with all kinds of data feeds, all kinds of projects, and I would love to have you, our audience, come and ask questions then. One more time, thank you so much to our audience for attending, to Mark in the YouTube for monitoring, and for our guests from dxFeed and Luca. I appreciate your time, everyone. I'll see you next time on Chainlink Live.